Good morning and welcome back to another edition of Research Fantasy Presents our CFL DFS picks for Week 2, starting Thursday, June 29th, 2017. I gotta be honest with you, Week 1 was a mixed bag for me as my cash games got a salty 66.7 points behind guys with great floors like Adarius Bowman and Emmanuel Arsenault just being incapable of breaking coverage. And granted, Bowman probably getting double teamed quite a bit. Arsenault just didn't really have the best quarterback play going for him. But I had a sweet victory as I took number 2 in the CFL kickoff on Draftkings. Would have been number 1, but the Hamilton offensive line is not good. They were just leaky all day and really let the quarterback play of Zach Collaros be as poor as possible. So on to the next one. I'm very satisfied that I was able to make, 2,500 times my investment this week in CFL DFS. So hoping to keep the trend going. Very thankful, and really just going through my lineup, I only had one guy at super low ownership, and that was Travis Harris at under 4%. Marquay McDaniel at 10.9. Everyone else over 12%, so it wasn't really anyone sneaky. I did have enough exposure to the Argos defense and Devier Posey, but it just came with guys like Adarius Bowman, so it really didn't make as much of an impact as it probably should have. This week will ultimately be just as interesting as Week 1, because Week 2 of any season in sports, or Game 2 or whatever you want to say, you're dealing with a lot of overreactionary thought. So I'm expecting there to be a lot of people on Ricky Ray. So hard to get these guys straight. I was going to go with Robbie Ray, but clearly that's a pitcher for the Arizona Diamondbacks. But after 500 plus yards, I think he's going to see high ownership with guys like Devier Posey, because players don't really know what to expect. I don't know what to expect. I'm just playing the game theory side of things and saying if people are going to bet heavy on Brandon Zylstra and Duke Williams and, Devier Posey, then I want to side with guys like Emmanuel Arsenault and Adarius Bowman, who people might be off. I heard enough chatter around the industry that it's quote-unquote almost never a good idea to play high-priced running backs when my second-place lineup had both Jeremiah Johnson and Jerome Messam in them. So I don't think that that's the case. I think that we'll see people try to capitalize on the Ottawa running back situation, where it could be William Powell, it could be Brandon Gillanders, and he's like dirt cheap, and I think that will cause players to, go that way. I could be completely wrong. I'm thinking that we'll see, even though their prices came up, guys like Posey and Zylstra see a high ownership, and this is just a week where I want to bail on at least one of them, and figuring out which one it's going to be is going to be difficult. But with that being said, I've written up a pretty thorough article that I plan on updating as news comes out. Unfortunately, we've already lost one very solid offensive contributor to the Hamilton Tiger Cats this year. Terrence Tolliver done for the year with an ACL tear. So he was another one of those guys in my cash game lineups that just couldn't get off the ground. Best of luck to him moving forward. I want to take a look at one guy from each position, and I don't know if I did it last time, but I'll throw in a defense as well. Let's start things off with Bo Levi Mitchell at 10-4 on DraftKings. Last week, I really wanted to go with Jonathan Jennings, and I will have some ownership of him this week. There's no question about it, but I was looking at it from the perspective of the upside that comes with the running. Well, this week, I just want to take Bo Levi Mitchell at his first game in Calgary against an Ottawa team that they played to a tie last week, that they lost to in the Grey Cup in the fall. This is going to be, in my opinion, the top game to get players from. I can see this being a higher scoring game than we saw last time, because both teams are probably fairly irritated. Ottawa gave the game away near the end and I think you're going to see a lot of action. I'm kind of setting my floor for Mitchell this week at about 350 yards. I feel like 3 touchdowns is completely within the realm of possibility, and it just comes down to this situation where if someone goes for 350 and 3 touchdowns, it's going to be very hard for any other quarterback to match those kind of numbers, and you find yourself in a situation where you could be done with things from the first night. This game kicks off Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I just think it's one of those situations where, especially in cash games, you want to get the points where they're sure, and there's no one more sure than Bo Levi Mitchell. Moving on from there, from running back, look, everybody is in a strong position again this week. All those top-tier backs are. Plus, you've got Terrell Sutton at 6,100, who will be playing for the first time. Well, not the first time, but he gets a good matchup. Chris Rainey, 6,600. I really like Rainey this week. One of the reasons I'll mention a little bit later, and that's a spoiler alert, but one of the reasons I really like Chris Rainey is because he's going to be one of the top 2 return guys each week unless somebody or more than one player ends up with a couple of touchdowns or 1 touchdown. But he's got a solid floor in the return yardage game. I mean, I think you're pretty well guaranteed to see over 100 return yards. And that's not really a huge deal. That alone isn't going to get you where you need to go, because I think that only comes down to a couple of points. But he has a high threat level of a touchdown. I mean, he ran one back in week 1. It was called back. But when you're looking at the return game in the CFL, Rainey is the most likely to score week in and week out. All right, that's just it. He's going to be involved in the offense. He's going to probably see a couple of carries. He's going to probably see a couple of catches. And anytime this guy touches the ball, he's a legitimate threat to do damage. He's a home run hitter. I'm not believing that the Argonauts were as good as they were. I just don't. I get it. Mark Trestman's back. Great pedigree as a coach. But I'm not buying that this is the team that we're going to get this year. I think that a lot of that was just poor play by Hamilton. And to be quite honest with you, I'm expecting BC to steamroll them this weekend to bring the Argos back down to earth. You can't, it's tough for me to sit here and call touchdowns because you really can't, but I have a very good feeling about Chris Rainey, and he's a guy at 6,600 that I think is even fair enough to put in my cash games. I don't know where I really want to go with receiver here. I'm just going to tell you my 2 favorites are probably Marquay McDaniel and Greg Ellingson in cash games, and Adarius Bowman and Emmanuel Arsenault in tournaments, just because you're buying in on the fact that they played so poorly last week that people might be off of them for other players, maybe just spending more thoroughly in that 7,500 to 6,500 range at the 2 wide receiver positions in flex. I'm going to drop down to Nick Demski at 4,300, and I really want to push Naaman Roosevelt here. I thought he's a frustrating player because basically he only catches passes. He just doesn't really score touchdowns, which is frustrating. But you could still get by if he has 12 catches for 140 yards. You're still in a tremendous position. But Demski is one of these guys like Brandon Zylstra and Devier Posey who are benefiting from either injuries or departures within their offense. Unlike those two, he didn't have a monster game, but he went 7 for 87. That's 15.7 fantasy points. That's 10 less than Zylstra. It's quite a bit less than Posey, but it still isn't a reason for him to be priced 4,300. I think that this is definitely contingent on injuries at the receiving core for Saskatchewan. But the reality of the situation is Kevin Glenn being a new quarterback there, if he's relying on Demski to produce, that $4,300 price tag goes so much further than it even sounds like, and it already sounds like it goes pretty far. So if you really want to differentiate how you're doing things, I really like the upside for Nick Demski this week, priced very low. Finally, the defense. Defense is very tough to predict in CFL. I'm going with the BC Lions because, again, I think everyone's going to be in awe of what Ricky Ray was able to do last week against Hamilton. Trestman knows how to run an offense. They're getting the most out of a 37-year-old footballer. But I just can't buy in that this is going to be a week in, week out consistent thing. My strategy in a lot of tournaments is going to be stacking Rainey and the BC Lions defense. It's not anything groundbreaking because I can't be the only one who knows that if you play them both at the same time and he has a return touchdown, you're getting double the points. But the reality of the situation is I think that the Argos, even though this game will be played on their home turf, will come crashing down to reality. I expect the BC Lions defense to come through with a pretty solid game. Thanks for watching. Once again, some of our favorite plays: Bo Levi Mitchell, Chris Rainey, Nick Demski, and the BC Lions defense. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel below. Head over to researchfantasy.com, see what we've got going on there. Like us on Facebook at Research Fantasy. Follow us on Twitter at Research Win, and join us again next week.